We need multiple ambulances.
Instead of them doing it to me, I'm going to do it to them. And when officers asked, do what? Allegedly, she responded, kill them all.
A mother, 4 children, a gas station at dawn. But when police arrived at the scene and asked her the simple question, why did you call 911? Her answer would become one of the most disturbing statements investigators had ever heard. She looked them dead in the eye and said, I didn't call 911, I called the devil. Inside her car, 2 of her children were already dead. And what investigators would discover about this woman's double life would be even more shocking than anyone could have imagined. This isn't just another tragic case of family violence. This is the story of Oninda Romelis, who curated an entire fantasy life on social media, funded by sophisticated fraud schemes, while her real life spiraled into darkness. A woman who appeared on reality television a decade ago, desperately seeking a father for her child, only to allegedly become the person who would take that same child's life. A woman who, when asked about her actions, told investigators something that still sends chills down the spines of everyone who heard it. Let me take you back to the beginning of October 2025. Oninda Romelis was living what appeared to be a dream life. Her social media was filled with posts about her bigger home in Porter, her completed salon, a spacious car that fit all her kids comfortably, and land she'd purchased in Haiti for a mini mansion. She boasted about gifting herself peace in 2023. To her online followers, she was the epitome of the Insta-baddie lifestyle, independent, successful, living her best life as a self-proclaimed tax preparer and mother of 5. But behind those carefully curated Instagram posts was a woman drowning in deception. Oninda had recently moved to Porter, Texas in May 2025, seeking what she called a fresh start. She'd left behind Atlanta, Georgia, where she'd attended Alonzo A. Crim High School and studied political science at Georgia Perimeter College. She'd worked entry-level jobs at Willie's Mexican Grill, McDonald's, and UPS. She'd even tried her hand at rapping, with lyrics that now feel eerily prophetic. Just dreams in my head. I push through the silver while they all put mama for me. I don't got no time for no hoe. That's just how the game go. But that tax preparer claim, it was all a lie. And on October 4th, when deputies executed a search warrant at her Porter home, they uncovered the shocking truth. Inside her house, investigators found 33 Social Security cards, 48 identification cards, some with her photo but different names, 16 credit cards, 2 U.S. Treasury checks, packages of blank checks, and multiple printers. This wasn't small-time fraud. This was a sophisticated identity theft operation that had been funding her entire lifestyle. And here's what makes this case even more tragic. Oninda had been showing signs of severe distress for weeks. Just days before the shooting, she'd posted cryptically on social media, "This past week, the devil has sent his minions to irritate and annoy me. I'm just glad I ignored them, because the way I'm heading, it's jail or hell." Friends who saw these posts defended her, insisting she was a good mother who took very good care of her kids and never abused them. But behind closed doors, something was clearly unraveling. Now, let's talk about that morning at the gas station. When deputies arrived at 4:48 a.m., they found Oninda standing beside her white Audi. Inside were her 4 youngest children, 13-year-old Ocario Covington, 9-year-old Kyle Romelis, 8-year-old Treviel Donner, and 3-year-old Amara Chappelle. All 4 had been shot at close range. Ocario and little Amara were already gone. Kyle and Treviel were barely clinging to life. She pulled into the gas station off of Highway 288 inches Angleton and called 911 around 4:48 a.m. Saturday morning. Deputies immediately began providing life-saving measures. Kyle and Treviel were airlifted to Memorial Hermann Hospital in Houston, where, miraculously, they would eventually stabilize. But for Ocario and Amara, there was nothing anyone could do. Oninda was arrested without resistance and taken to the Brazoria County Jail. And this is where the story takes its most disturbing turn. During her interview with investigators, Oninda displayed what deputies described as paranoid behavior. She kept glancing at the door repeatedly. Her responses were incoherent, disjointed. But some of what she said was crystal clear and absolutely chilling. When asked why she did it, Oninda told investigators, "Instead of them doing it to me, I'm going to do it to them, kill them all. You can't take me without me taking you." When deputies found her at the scene, she was mumbling to herself. What was she saying? "They're with the devil, they're dead to me." And remember how I mentioned she called 911? Well, according to investigators, when they asked her about that call, Oninda insisted she hadn't called 911 at all. She claimed she had called the devil. But to understand how a mother could do something so unthinkable, we need to go back, way back, because Oninda's story didn't start on that October morning at a gas station in Texas. It started over a decade ago, in a very different setting on national television, in front of millions of viewers, as she desperately sought to find a father for the very child she would later allegedly kill. Approximately 12 years before that fateful morning in Angleton, a teenage Oninda Romelis appeared on Lauren Lake's paternity court with her 1-year-old son, Ocario Covington. The episode, titled Romelis v. Seymour, Covington, would become one of the most shocking in the show's history, and in hindsight, it reveals so much about the complicated, troubled life Oninda was already living.
Please be seated.
Hello, Your Honor. This is a case of Romelis versus Seymour Covington.
Thank you, Jerome.
You're welcome.
Good day, everyone. Ms. Romelis, you are here today to test 2 men to determine the paternity of your son.
At just 18 or 19 years old, Oninda was already a mother, already navigating complex relationships, already making choices that would haunt her for years to come. She'd been in a 4-year relationship with Dwayne Seymour, who everyone called DJ. He was her financial and spiritual guidance, as she described it on the show. He'd even proposed to her with his mother's ring. But Oninda had heard rumors that DJ was cheating on her specifically, that he'd had sex behind a strip club dumpster.
I heard from someone that he was at the strip club having sex.
You can hear what you want to hear.
He was having sex
You can hear
behind
what
the
you want to hear. That'll
dumpster.
make it true.
Whether those rumors were true or not, Oninda made a choice that would change everything. She decided to cheat on DJ, admittedly, she said, out of spite. The other man? Jeremy Covington, a mutual friend she'd been talking to for about 3 months, and then she got pregnant. Here's where it gets complicated. Oninda knew she'd slept with both men within a narrow time frame just 2.5 weeks apart. But instead of being honest from the start, she played both men against each other. She initially led DJ to believe the baby was his, even accepting his marriage proposal. Meanwhile, she listed Jeremy's name on the birth certificate.
You find out you're pregnant.
Yes, Your Honor.
This is in fact the birth certificate, and under father, it says Jeremy Covington, not Dwayne Seymour.
The truth came out during an argument when Oninda was pregnant. She finally admitted to DJ that the baby might not be his, but Jeremy? He was convinced Oninda was manipulating him, using him because he was a good man who was working, taking care of my family.
She's a manipulator, she's a liar. She basically, she feel like I'm a good man. I'm working, taking care of my family, my brothers and nephews. So she feel like I'm the guy for her to be this child, because he's gonna be responsible and he's gonna do what he gotta do to take care of this child. But
Judge Lauren Lake didn't hold back in her assessment of the situation. She called out Oninda's behavior directly, telling her she was working each angle and playing both men to see who'll come out with a better hand.
Bottom line is, Ms. Romelis, you are in position where neither one of these men knows whether or not they are definitively the child's father. So you work in each angle, like you do this and you do that, and then
the better end.
you do this and you do that, because you just don't understand who the real father is.
But nothing could have prepared anyone for what came next. When the DNA results were read, the courtroom fell silent. First, Dwayne Seymour was tested.
In the case of Romelis versus Seymour Covington, when it comes to the paternity of Ocario Covington. Mr. Seymour, you are not the father.
Okay, so it must be Jeremy then, right? Wrong.
When it comes to the paternity of Ocario Covington, Mr. Covington, you are not the father.
Seriously?
Seriously, baby.
Neither man was Ocario's biological father. The audience gasped. Oninda herself seemed shocked, insisting, "I had sex with these two. I didn't have sex with anybody else." But Judge Lake wasn't buying it.
Ms. Romelis, do you have any idea?
I had sex with them. I didn't have sex with anybody else. So I don't know what you all.
Well,
it must be.
Unfortunately,
I don't know.
Oh, man.
The entire courtroom
What?
knows that that is a lie.
Despite the DNA results, both men said they would continue to be involved in Ocario's life. Jeremy especially emphasized this commitment, even though he was clearly hurt by the revelation. But the episode ended with Oninda admitting she had an idea of who the father might actually be, meaning there was yet another man she hadn't even brought to court. This episode, which now has over 1 million views on YouTube, became a haunting piece of evidence after the shooting. Here was a young mother who said she grew up without a father and desperately wanted her son to have one. "I grew up without my father, so I want this child to have a father into his life," she told Judge Lake. And now, 13 years later, that same child was dead, allegedly at her own hands. But Ocario wasn't Oninda's only child. She would go on to have 4 more children from different relationships. And here's a disturbing pattern. Many of her partners had serious criminal histories. One was convicted of attempted kidnapping of a prosecutor's father. Another was arrested for murder. These weren't stable relationships, and they weren't providing the kind of family structure Oninda had claimed she wanted for her children. By 2025, Oninda had 5 children total. But there's a mystery here that investigators are still trying to solve. A 5th child, reportedly 17 years old, was unaccounted for after the shooting. This teenager wasn't at the scene, wasn't at the house when it was searched, and family members claimed they did not know their whereabouts. Where is this child? Were they lucky enough to be elsewhere that night? Or is there something even more sinister to this story? Oninda's life between the paternity court appearance and the shooting was marked by instability. She had a criminal record in Georgia, including a 2022 arrest in Fayette County for DUI related to drugs, failure to maintain lane, and marijuana possession. She pleaded guilty to the DUI charge while the others were dismissed. There were also reports of reckless driving, disturbance calls, and one prior contact with Child Protective Services, though details of that interaction remain confidential. When she moved to Texas in May 2025, Oninda told friends it was for peace of mind and better living, but she left behind her entire support system. Her father, still in Georgia, would later tell media outlets that the family was still trying to make sense of it all. In Porter, Texas, Oninda was essentially alone with her children, maintaining her elaborate online persona while her real life crumbled behind closed doors. And that online persona? It was becoming increasingly dark. Along with the boasts about her material success, Oninda was posting messages that suggested a woman at the end of her rope. Beyond the Devil's Minions post, she shared other concerning thoughts. One post targeted relationships. "I'm glad you learned your lesson. Please stop disrespecting these women. Never know how tired they are." Was she talking about herself? Was this a cry for help disguised as advice?
Seeing them Friday and they were happy and on their way telling us hi and bye, and figuring I would see them again Monday afternoon. Heartbreaking to think that anything could be so bad that you have to take your children's life.
But if you want to understand what really pushed Oninda over the edge, We need to talk about what investigators believe was her true motivation, and it has everything to do with those children she allegedly loved so much being in her way. According to investigators' interpretation of Oninda's statements and the evidence they gathered, she had come to view her children as obstacles. Obstacles to what? To her business, the fraud operation, to her social media lifestyle, to her ability to go to happy hours and maintain her Insta-baddie image. In her increasingly distorted view of reality, her children weren't blessings to protect. They were burdens preventing her from living the life she wanted. Think about that for a moment. Here was a woman who had boasted on social media about buying a bigger home for her kids, a car that could fit all of them comfortably. A woman who told Judge Lauren Lake 13 years ago that she wanted her son to have a father because she'd grown up without one. But somewhere along the way, the pressure of maintaining her fraudulent lifestyle, combined with what appears to be serious mental health issues, twisted that maternal instinct into something monstrous. When investigators searched her home, they found more than just fraud evidence. They found a woman's entire double life laid bare, the printers used to create fake IDs scattered in her office, the notebooks likely containing details of her schemes, the social security cards hidden in her bedroom closet. This wasn't a small-time operation. This was sophisticated, organized fraud that required time, attention, and secrecy. And 4 young children don't exactly make secrecy easy. But let's be clear about something. While investigators suggest Oninda's frustration with motherhood may have played a role, they emphasize that no official motive has been confirmed. What we do know is that her statements during the interview paint a picture of someone experiencing severe paranoia and possible psychotic symptoms.
This event has shaken our community, and we are all feeling the loss.
When Sheriff Bo Stallman held a press conference, you could see the weight of what his deputies had witnessed. This wasn't just another case for them. This was something that would stay with them forever. The details that have emerged about that morning are absolutely haunting. Surveillance footage shows Oninda calmly pumping gas, talking on her phone, looking like any other person stopping at a gas station in the early morning hours. But inside her car, 4 children were fighting for their lives. Some were already gone, and she just stood there, pumped her gas, waited for the police to arrive.
This does have a $14 million bond, and investigators have not released a motive. The 2 children who survived the shooting are stable in the hospital and have been interviewed, and deputies say that they are cooperating.
And prosecutors aren't stopping there. They've indicated they may seek the death penalty if Oninda is found competent to stand trial. That competency evaluation is crucial, because while Oninda's actions were undeniably evil, her statements to investigators raise serious questions about her mental state. Talking about calling the devil instead of 911, saying her children were with the devil, repeatedly stating, instead of them doing it to me, I'm going to do it to them, but never clarifying who them was or what she thought they were going to do. Oninda is currently being held in isolation at the Brazoria County Jail under 24-hour monitoring. She's considered a high-risk inmate, both because of the nature of her alleged crimes and because of concerns about her mental stability. Meanwhile, Kyle and Treviel, the 2 surviving children, are in stable condition and have been cooperating with investigators. Can you imagine being 8 or 9 years old, waking up in a hospital and learning that your mother, the person who's supposed to protect you above all else, is the reason your siblings are dead and you're in a hospital bed? The trauma these children will carry for the rest of their lives is unimaginable. They've been placed in foster care, and Child Protective Services is prioritizing their well-being while planning a public fatality report. Neighbors in Porter described the children as happy, friendly kids who would wave and stop to pet dogs.
He always waves and we tell him hi, and they come back by, and I have a little Yorkie, and sometimes she'll stop and ask if she can pet the puppy. Just seeing them Friday, and they were happy and on their way, telling us hi and bye, and figuring I would see them again Monday afternoon.
One neighbor said she saw them Friday afternoon, just hours before the shooting, and they were smiling and saying hello as usual. There were no red flags, no signs that anything was wrong. Which makes this all the more terrifying, how quickly everything can change, how well someone can hide their descent into darkness. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office assisted with the home search, and the fraud investigation continues separately, meaning Oninda could face additional federal charges related to the identity theft operation. But honestly, compared to 2 counts of capital murder, what difference does it make? As this case moves toward trial, the legal proceedings will likely focus heavily on Oninda's mental state. Was this premeditated murder, as her drive from Porter to Angleton and her statements might suggest? Or was this a woman in the throes of a complete psychotic break? The answer to that question could literally mean the difference between life and death for Oninda. But for Ocario and Amara, it doesn't matter. For Kyle and Trevial, who will carry physical and emotional scars forever, the legal distinctions are meaningless. For the first responders who tried desperately to save those children, for the community of Angleton shaken by this unthinkable tragedy, for everyone who's followed this case, no courtroom verdict can truly provide justice for what happened on that October morning. The devil didn't make Oninda Romelis do anything. Whatever happened in that car, whatever led to those 4 children being shot, the responsibility lies with her and her alone.
Police tell us he literally lived across the street inside of this apartment complex, and when they went in to arrest him, well, they made a gruesome discovery.
They discovered a deceased female on the floor in an advanced stage of decomposition.
Police officers burst through an apartment door, expecting to find a murder suspect, but instead they stumble upon something so horrifying, so utterly unthinkable, that even seasoned detectives are left speechless. Inside that apartment, hidden beneath the mundane trappings of everyday life, lies evidence of a crime so chilling that it would make history in Montgomery County, Maryland. But here's what nobody saw coming. The story truly begins on a cold December evening in 2022, when a seemingly ordinary dispute over an iced tea would spiral into a brutal execution-style killing that would shock an entire community. 31-year-old Tori Damian Moore walked into the Dash-In convenience store on New Hampshire Avenue in Silver Spring, Maryland, a store he had been explicitly banned from entering. The 61-year-old clerk working that night was Ayalu Wandimu, a hard-working man who had no idea that this routine shift would be his last moments on Earth.
The background here, prosecutors say, caught in dramatic surveillance video December 2022, Moore shot and killed a cashier at a convenience store on New Hampshire Avenue in Silver Spring. There was a dispute and Moore opened fire on the 61-year-old man in an execution-style murder.
What happened next was captured in horrifying detail by the store's surveillance cameras. Moore selected an iced tea. An argument erupted between him and Wandimu, and in a flash of rage, Moore threw items at the clerk. When Wandimu picked up a pole to defend himself, Moore made a decision that would seal both their fates. He pulled out a handgun and opened fire, shooting the defenseless clerk multiple times in what prosecutors would later describe as an execution-style murder. The violence was swift, merciless, and captured frame by frame on video that would later become crucial evidence in court. But here's where this story takes an absolutely devastating turn that nobody, not the responding officers, not the prosecutors, not even the most experienced detectives could have anticipated. Hours after the convenience store shooting, a SWAT team executed a no-knock search warrant at Moore's apartment, which was located directly across the street from the very store where Wandimu had been killed. They were there to arrest Moore for the clerk's murder, expecting a straightforward apprehension of a dangerous suspect. What they found inside that apartment would haunt them forever. The moment officers breached the door, they were immediately assaulted by an overwhelming, nauseating odor, the unmistakable smell of death and decomposition that had permeated every corner of the living space. As they moved deeper into the apartment, they discovered Moore sleeping calmly in the dining room, completely at ease despite the horror that surrounded him. And right there, next to where he had been resting, officers found the handgun that had been used to end Wandimu's life just hours earlier. But the true nightmare was still waiting to be uncovered. In the bedroom, underneath a blanket, officers discovered the body of a young woman in an advanced state of decomposition.
When police tracked Moore down across the street inside his apartment, they also made a gruesome discovery: his girlfriend, Denise Middleton, dead, her body mummified.
The remains were so deteriorated that identification would require forensic examination. This was 26-year-old Denise Middleton, Moore's girlfriend, and she had been lying there, forgotten and abandoned, for approximately 2 months while Moore continued to live his life in that very same apartment. The horror didn't end there. The autopsy would reveal something even more heartbreaking. Denise had been 8.5 months pregnant when she died. At 38 weeks, she was carrying a viable male fetus whom her family had already named Ezekiel. This baby boy was just days away from being born, just moments away from taking his first breath, just heartbeats away from meeting his family who had already prepared a name and a future for him. Medical examiners confirmed that the fetus was fully viable and would have survived if delivered, making this not just a double murder, but a tragedy that would resonate through multiple generations of a grieving family.
He was apparently known to police. Court documents show his criminal history includes arrests for armed robbery, having a gun, assault, and kidnapping.
Moore was no stranger to the criminal justice system. He had a long list of violence and disregard for human life. Armed robbery, assaults, robbery with a deadly weapon, kidnapping, controlled substance possession with intent to distribute, and carrying a loaded handgun. This was a man who had repeatedly demonstrated that he was a danger to those around him, yet he had remained free to commit the most heinous acts imaginable. But the question that hung heavy in the air, the question that would drive the investigation forward and torment Denise's family for years to come, was simple yet devastating. How long had Moore been living with Denise's body? How many days, how many nights, how many ordinary moments had he spent in that apartment, walking past her remains, sleeping just rooms away from the woman he had killed and the son he would never meet? And perhaps most chillingly of all, what had driven him to pull the trigger not once, but multiple times, ending 2 innocent lives in the span of just 2 months? To understand the full scope of this tragedy, we need to rewind the clock and examine the relationship between Tori Moore and Denise Middleton, a relationship that, from the outside, might have looked like any other young couple navigating the complexities of impending parenthood, but behind closed doors was marred by violence, control, and escalating danger that would ultimately prove fatal. Denise Middleton was born on March 14, 1996. At just 26 years old, she was preparing for the most transformative experience of her life, becoming a mother. She and Moore shared an apartment at 11,235 Oak Leaf Drive in Silver Spring, and to casual observers, they might have seemed like any other couple preparing for their first child. But the reality was far darker than anyone could have imagined. In June of 2022, months before her death, Denise had reached out to police in Norfolk, Virginia, with a terrifying account of domestic violence. She reported that Moore had punched her and choked her for 3 agonizing minutes, cutting off her air supply and leaving her gasping for breath, certain that she might die right there. This wasn't a minor altercation or a regrettable loss of temper. This was a sustained, deliberate act of violence that demonstrated Moore's capacity for cruelty and his willingness to hurt the woman who was carrying his child. An outstanding warrant was issued for Moore on aggravated assault charges, but tragically, it would never be served in time to save Denise's life. Defense attorneys would later characterize the relationship as complex and turbulent, suggesting that both parties bore responsibility for the dysfunction that plagued their time together. But here's what we know with absolute certainty. Only one person in that relationship would end up dead, and only one person would pull the trigger that ended 2 lives. The fatal night arrived on October 9th, 2022. Surveillance cameras captured Moore and Middleton entering an elevator around 7 o'clock in the evening. What those cameras recorded next would become crucial evidence in understanding the final moments before Denise's death. The footage showed a physical fight erupting between them in the confined space of the elevator, Moore grabbing Denise, pushing her, the violence escalating with each passing second as the elevator carried them upward toward their apartment and toward Denise's tragic fate. They entered the apartment together, but approximately 1 hour later, Moore emerged alone. What happened during that hour remains known only to Moore himself, but the physical evidence tells a story of unimaginable brutality and terror. Denise was shot 7 times, with at least 4 of those shots striking her in the back as she likely tried to flee from the man who was supposed to protect her and their unborn child. Projectiles were later recovered during the autopsy, each one a silent witness to the violence that had unfolded in that apartment. But here's where Moore's actions become even more calculated and chilling. After taking Denise's life, Moore didn't panic, didn't immediately flee, didn't turn himself in or show any remorse. Instead, he made a series of deliberate choices that demonstrate consciousness of guilt and an attempt to evade justice. He traveled to North Carolina and California, spending approximately 26 days away from the apartment while Denise's body lay where it had fallen, slowly decomposing in the bedroom they had once shared. During this time, Moore's phone records revealed a series of disturbing internet searches that paint a picture of a man desperately trying to understand the consequences of his actions and find ways to avoid detection. He searched for phrases like, "How long does it take for a dead body to smell?" and "How to move a dead body without being seen." Questions that reveal he knew exactly what he had done and was actively seeking ways to conceal his crime. He even searched for defenses for murder, suggesting he was already contemplating his legal strategy should he be caught, already preparing excuses and justifications for the inexcusable. Eventually, Moore returned to the apartment. And here's what makes this case so particularly disturbing. He lived there with Denise's decomposing body for weeks. The body had been left under a blanket in the bedroom, deteriorating in an advanced state of decomposition, while Moore carried on with his daily routines, sleeping in the dining room, coming and going as if nothing had happened. How does someone do that? How does someone walk past the body of the woman they once claimed to love, the mother of their unborn child, day after day, night after night, and continue living as if everything is normal? Police would later find Moore sleeping peacefully next to the very handgun he had used to commit his crimes, the weapon lying within arm's reach like some macabre security blanket. It was the same gun that had ended Denise's life, the same gun that had taken their son's future before he even had a chance to draw his first breath, and soon, it would be the same gun used to take yet another innocent life. The question that haunts this case, the question that Denise's father would later pose at a press conference, speaks to the fundamental mystery at the heart of this tragedy. Dennis Middleton, speaking through his grief and seeking some shred of understanding that might make sense of the senseless, said simply, "I'd really like to hear why. Why did Moore kill the woman who was carrying his child? Why did he live with her body for months? Why did he then go on to kill again?"
We have breaking news out of Montgomery County, Maryland. A man has been found guilty of murdering his girlfriend and her unborn child. He is 33-year-old Tory Damian Moore. A jury just found him guilty of murdering 26-year-old Denise Middleton back in 2022, and he's the first in Montgomery County to also be convicted of murdering a viable fetus.
The path to justice for Denise Middleton, her unborn son Ezekiel, and Ayalu Wandimu would be long, complex, and would ultimately make legal history in Montgomery County, Maryland. But it would also raise profound questions about mental health, criminal responsibility, and society's ability to protect vulnerable women from intimate partner violence. Moore was arrested on December 9, 2022, hours after the discovery of Denise's body and his apprehension following Wandimu's murder. Initially, the legal system hit an unexpected roadblock. In late December of 2022, Moore was ruled incompetent to stand trial due to schizophrenia, a diagnosis that his defense attorneys would lean heavily on throughout the proceedings. He was held without bond and committed for psychiatric evaluation, while prosecutors, victims' families, and the community at large waited to see if he would ever face accountability for his alleged crimes. The question of Moore's mental state would become a central battleground in the case. Defense attorneys argued that their client suffered from schizophrenia and mental illness that disconnected him from reality, pointing to his decision to live with Denise's decomposing body as evidence of his detachment from rational thought. They suggested that a person in their right mind could never make such choices, that the very nature of his actions demonstrated profound mental disturbance rather than calculated criminality. But prosecutors saw something entirely different in Moore's behavior. They emphasized his calculated actions, his internet searches about decomposition and moving bodies, his travels to other states, and his ability to function in everyday life despite the horror unfolding in his apartment. These weren't the actions of someone completely divorced from reality. These were the actions of someone who knew he had committed a crime and was actively trying to avoid consequences. By July 26, 2023, Moore's competency was restored, allowing the trials to finally proceed. The legal system had determined that he could understand the charges against him and assist in his own defense, clearing the way for justice to move forward. The first trial came in May of 2024. Moore was convicted of first-degree murder for the killing of Ayalu Wandimu, along with charges for use of a firearm and a felony and illegal possession of a firearm. The convenience store surveillance video, the ballistics evidence linking the gun to shell casings found at the scene, and Moore's own admission during police interviews created an overwhelming case that left little room for doubt. A jury of his peers looked at the evidence and unanimously agreed. Tory Moore had murdered an innocent man in cold blood over a dispute about an iced tea. But it was the second trial that would make history. Between November 18th and 22nd, 2024, Moore stood trial for the murders of Denise Middleton and her unborn child. The evidence presented was as comprehensive as it was damning. The apartment and elevator surveillance footage showing the physical altercation, the phone searches revealing his consciousness of guilt, the autopsy results confirming that Denise had been shot 7 times and that her fetus was viable and would have survived delivery, and the ballistics evidence linking the same gun used to kill Wandamu to Denise's murder. During interviews with police, Moore admitted to shooting Wandamu but claimed he had found Denise already dead when he returned from buying marijuana. He acknowledged choking her a little bit earlier but denied being the one who killed her, despite being pretty positive the same gun was used in both murders. His story strained credulity. If he had truly found her dead, why not call the police? Why travel to other states? Why search online for information about decomposing bodies? Why live with her remains for months? On November 22, 2024, the jury returned with their verdict, guilty on all counts. Moore was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for Denise and 1 for her viable fetus, along with additional charges including use of a firearm in a felony, crime of violence against a pregnant person, and illegal possession of a firearm. This marked Montgomery County's first conviction for the murder of a viable fetus, setting a legal precedent that would potentially influence future prosecutions involving violence against pregnant women. The sentencing came on May 30th, 2025, before Judge Rachel McGuckian. In a courtroom filled with the families of the victims, people who had waited years for this moment of accountability, the judge handed down a sentence that matched the severity of Moore's crimes. 3 consecutive life sentences, 1 for each victim, whose life he had taken plus 80 years to run concurrently for the firearm and other charges. Moore would not be eligible for parole until he reaches his 90s, effectively ensuring he would spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. Throughout the sentencing hearing, Moore remained silent, offering no explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement of the devastation he had caused. He had nothing to say to Denise's family, who would never hear her laugh again or hold her close. He had nothing to say to little Ezekiel, who would never take his first steps or speak his first words. He had nothing to say to Wandamu's widow, who had described her husband as my everything, and whose world had been shattered by a senseless act of violence. Denise's family, though appreciative of the guilty verdicts and the historic nature of the conviction, still sought answers about Moore's motives. Perhaps there is no explanation that could ever make sense of such senseless brutality. Perhaps some questions are destined to remain forever unanswered because the truth is simply too dark, too incomprehensible for human understanding. Wandamu's widow expressed her profound loss in court, speaking to the hole that would forever exist in her life where her husband once stood. He had been her partner, her companion, her everything, and in a flash of rage over something as trivial as an iced tea, he had been ripped away from her forever.
Be seen on this video how toxic things were between them.
For real, man. Well, leave. Man, somebody come get their home girl, man. What wrong with her? Huh?
Huh? You heard me.
What you saying?
Why you up there trying to front for them? I cracked your window.
This not my car.
Who party?
It ain't in my name.
You driving it, so you responsible.
I'm taking it back today. It's a rental.
I don't care.
Move.
I'm gonna take your tag.
Y'all look at this. She got a 211, y'all. No. Baby got a black and mild behind her ear. No, she losing herself. Baby mama. Baby mama. Why you doing all that?
I want to talk to you.
Where my child at? Can we go take the DNA test today?
Yeah, it's not that.
Oh. Damn, boy, I wish I never dealt with her, boy, ever again in my life. I had to bag back up. But y'all going in on these comments. Look. Oh! Baby mama. Baby mama, I'm tired of you. You doing things that a child will do. Somebody help me, please.
And we're following a developing story this afternoon. Kodisha Bryson, there she is, locked up at this hour.
Mary, I'm sorry, Nisha, I love y'all. I'm sorry that went my attention. All right, okay. The gun went off. I would never try to hurt him. He's a great daddy. I'm sorry, Mary.
In the dead of night, on what should have been just another ordinary evening at a Motel 6 located on Wade Hampton Boulevard in the city of Greenville, the piercing, unmistakable sound of shattering glass violently broke through the silence, immediately followed by the thunderous crack of gunshots that would forever change the lives of multiple families. But what you're about to discover about this case, about the woman behind the trigger, and about the devastating sequence of events that led to this moment will absolutely shock you to your core. A woman named Kodisha Bryson was arrested and locked up after allegedly shooting and killing her ex-boyfriend at the Motel 6 in Greenville County. But this wasn't just a random act of violence that erupted out of nowhere on this particular fateful night. This was the catastrophic, tragic culmination of a relationship that had spiraled completely and utterly out of control, a relationship that had been plagued by toxicity, by violence, and by an inability to let go even when love had long since died and turned into something far more dangerous and sinister. David Edens Jr. was the victim in this absolutely heartbreaking case. He was a father, a son, and a beloved family member who meant the world to those who knew and loved him dearly.
He's a good father, good family person, good outgoing person.
His loved ones would later describe him with tears streaming down their faces and pain evident in every single word they spoke. But on this particular night, the horror of that night began to unfold when the sound of breaking glass followed by gunshots woke many who slept at the Motel 6 in Greenville County. Imagine, if you will, being jolted awake from your sleep by the violent, aggressive sound of glass being smashed, followed immediately by the explosive reports of gunfire echoing through the corridors and reverberating off the walls.
My sister called me and was crying and told me something had happened to my son. She called back, said he had been shot.
David Edens Sr., the victim's father, would later recall with a voice heavy with grief and disbelief, the phone call that no parent ever wants to receive. Investigators say Kodisha Bryson broke motel windows in search of David Edens Jr., and when she found him, she shot and killed him. This wasn't a case of self-defense. This wasn't an accidental discharge of a firearm during an argument. This was a woman who deliberately, intentionally smashed through windows with determination and purpose, actively searching for her ex-boyfriend with a loaded weapon in her possession. The level of rage, the intensity of emotion, the complete and total loss of control that must have consumed Kodisha Bryson in those moments is almost impossible to fully comprehend or articulate.
He got 2 sons and a daughter.
Investigators say Kodisha Bryson broke motel windows in search of David Edens Jr., and when she found him, she shot and killed him.
The devastating reality of what transpired that night, becoming clearer and more horrific with each passing detail. David Edens Jr. left behind 2 sons and a daughter, young children who would now have to grow up without their father, who would never again feel his embrace, hear his voice, or receive his guidance and love. The ripple effects of this single act of violence would extend far beyond just the immediate loss of life, touching and forever altering the trajectories of countless lives, especially those of these innocent children who had absolutely nothing to do with the toxic dynamics that existed between their parents. The two used to be in a relationship and have a daughter, David's father explained, providing crucial context to help understand the complicated, intertwined history between the victim and his killer. They weren't strangers. They weren't casual acquaintances.
They just didn't do right together.
He says the two used to be in a relationship and have a daughter.
He's a good father and everything. He's a good dude.
Painting a picture of a man who tried his best to be a good father despite the challenges and difficulties he faced in his relationship with Kodisha. They had built a life together at one point, they had created a child together, and they had shared intimate moments and experiences. But somewhere along the way, That relationship had soured, had turned toxic, had transformed into something dangerous and unhealthy for everyone involved. But this wasn't the first time that violence had erupted between these two individuals. There was a documented pattern, a clear history of aggression and volatility, with Kodesha being identified as the primary aggressor, the one who initiated and escalated conflicts to physical altercations. She attacked him before and wouldn't let go when he no longer wanted to be with her anymore. When someone decides that a relationship is no longer working, when someone chooses to walk away and pursue happiness elsewhere, that decision should be respected, even if it's painful, even if it's difficult, even if it breaks your heart into a million pieces. But for Kodesha Bryson, the concept of letting go, of accepting that David no longer wanted to be with her romantically, seemed to be completely and utterly impossible. She absolutely refused to release her grip on him, even when he made it abundantly clear that he wanted to move on with his life without her.
Damn, boy, I wish I never dealt with her, boy, ever again in my life. I had to bad back up. But y'all going in on these comments. Look.
What appears to be David's own words, captured on video, expressing his deep regret about the relationship and his desperate wish to be free from the chaos and drama that Kodesha brought into his existence. The frustration in those words is palpable. This was a man who had reached his breaking point, who had endured enough turmoil and conflict, who just wanted peace and stability in his life. But unfortunately, tragically, devastatingly, Kodesha Bryson would not allow him to have that peace.
Baby mama, I'm tired of you. You doing things that a child will do. Somebody help me, please.
And then came that fateful night at the Motel 6, when all of that anger, all of that obsession, all of that inability to let go would explode into lethal violence. After the shooting, Bryson turned herself in, a detail that might seem like evidence of remorse or conscience, but which does absolutely nothing to bring David Edens Jr. back to his family, to his children, to his loved ones who are now left to pick up the shattered pieces of their lives. She did have a bond hearing following her surrender to authorities, where she would come face to face with the family whose lives she had irrevocably destroyed, where she would have to confront the enormity and the consequences of what she had done on that terrible night.
I apologize. My intention was to never hurt her. I never tried it. Okay. I'm sorry, okay.
Kodesha Bryson's tearful words during what appears to be a court proceeding, words that probably rang hollow to the family members who were forced to sit there and listen to them. An apology, no matter how seemingly sincere, no matter how many tears accompany it, cannot undo the permanent damage that has been done. It cannot resurrect the dead. It cannot give children back their father. It cannot heal the wounds that will never fully close for those left behind to grieve.
The gun went off. I would never try to hurt him. He's a great dad. I'm sorry, man.
Kodesha's explanation for what happened, phrasing it as if the weapon discharged itself, as if she bore no responsibility for pulling the trigger, as if this was some kind of terrible accident rather than the culmination of her deliberate actions.
Man, I'm sorry, Nisha, I love y'all. I'm sorry that wasn't my intention. All right. The gun went off. I would never try to hurt him. He's a great daddy. I'm sorry, man.
Her words to David's family members, claiming that she never intended to hurt him, describing him as a great father even as she was the one who ensured those children would grow up without that great father in their lives. The cognitive dissonance, the contradiction, the sheer audacity of shooting someone to death and then claiming you never meant to hurt them is almost too much to process or comprehend. A judge told her that she would have to face a circuit court judge, so she denied bond because of the severity of the murder charge in this case, meaning that Kodesha would remain locked up, unable to post bail due to the serious nature of the charges she was facing.
She apologized, but at the same time, you had time to think.
She says her family is strong, but they're still very upset.
David Edens Jr.'s cousin, Laquise Baldwin, expresses the complex emotions of hearing an apology from the person who killed your loved one, acknowledging it while also recognizing that it changes absolutely nothing about the fundamental reality of the situation. David's family was vocal in their pursuit of justice, refusing to remain silent, refusing to let their loved one's death be swept under the rug or forgotten, demanding that Kodesha Bryson be held fully accountable for taking David away from them forever.
We just want to know why.
He left his kids, he left his family. The rest is around the holidays. And we just want to know why.
The heartbreaking plea from family members who were struggling to make sense of this senseless tragedy, especially given that it occurred around the holiday season, a time that should be filled with joy and family gatherings rather than funeral arrangements and court proceedings. The question of why, the desperate need to understand what could possibly drive someone to commit such an act, is something that may never be fully answered or satisfied.
He's a good father, good family person, good outgoing person. The question is this why?
Emphasizing once again the type of person David was and the incomprehensibility of his murder. His mother, devastated, spoke out about the need for accountability, channeling her unbearable grief into a determination to see justice served.
David didn't deserve this, she said. He was taken from us too soon.
Words that capture the fundamental injustice of a life cut short, of potential unrealized, of a future stolen. No parent should have to bury their child. No child should have to grow up without their father because of an act of violence committed by someone who claimed to love them. His friends and loved ones echoed that sentiment, demanding that Kodesha face the full consequences of her actions, united in their grief and their determination to ensure that David's death would not go unpunished. Along with that murder charge, Bryson is also charged with possession of a weapon during a violent crime, as well as malicious damage. The additional charges stemming from her actions that night, from the windows she smashed, from the weapon she wielded, from the violence she unleashed upon an unsuspecting victim who had every right to believe he was safe in that motel room. Yet, despite all of this, despite the anger and the grief and the desire for justice, there are still complicated emotions at play.
And even though David Eaton Sr. wants justice, he says no one wins.
I'm sorry for her too, because he got other kids, and it's all about the kids right now. He gone. He pretty much gone now.
David's father expressing a compassion and empathy that is remarkable, given the circumstances, recognizing that Kodesha's children will also suffer as a result of her actions. This is the true tragedy of domestic violence that escalates to murder. There are no winners, only victims. David is gone forever. His children will grow up without him. Kodesha's children will grow up with their mother in prison, and an entire extended family network is left to deal with trauma and loss that will reverberate through generations. But justice isn't always straightforward. As the case unfolds, there will be debates over intent, over passion versus premeditation, and over whether Kodesha Bryson's version of events can hold up in court. The legal system will have to determine exactly what happened that night, whether this was a crime of passion or something more calculated, and whether her claim that the gun simply went off holds any credibility whatsoever. But regardless of what happens in that courtroom, regardless of what verdict is ultimately reached, regardless of what sentence is imposed, the fundamental truth remains unchanged and unchangeable. David Edens Jr. is dead, killed by a woman who refused to accept that their relationship was over, killed in a moment of rage and violence that cannot be undone or taken back. Do you think this death could have been avoided? Let me know in the comments section. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.